Hello, my name is Jimmy Walter. Like everyone else, I watched the planes hit the World Trade Towers and I watched them collapse. Like everyone else, I thought it was the impact of the planes and the ensuing fires that caused the collapse. Like everyone else, I became concerned with terrorism. I went onto the internet and started researching the foreign newspapers and articles that were appearing there, but were not making the light of day in the American mainstream press, or were buried on page 88 in a small and usually misleading headline. What I discovered was that not only did Saddam Hussein not have weapons of mass destruction, did not have poison factories, but in fact fought Al-Qaeda tooth and nail as an arch enemy. But what really alarmed me was the fact that George Tenet, the CIA, and the international press were warning us clearly that invading Iraq would swell the terrorist ranks, increase terrorism, and make us less secure. I was so alarmed I ran full-page ads in the New York Times, USA Today, various alternative newspapers across the country. I was censored by the LA Times. I was ignored by everyone. I shut up when the war started in order to support our troops. After mission accomplished was asserted, I started going around the country to the protests to bring our boys home. There I met Eric Hufschmidt, who had written Painful Deceptions and Painful Questions. I got his book and video, but never gave him the time of day. At worst, I thought 9/11 was a sin of omission, where the administration had let it happen in order to further their own nefarious world domination purposes. I did not believe that the World Trade Center was brought down with explosives. About 6 months later, a friend cajoled me into watching Eric's video. It was an epiphany. I knew after watching his video that towers had been brought down with explosives. When I saw heavy steel beams flying straight out, some of them actually going up and down, trailed by a smoke cloud of poisonous debris, I knew that it had to be explosives. Please watch the following video of the event I produced on September 11th of 2004 in New York City, which follows, and see, as they say in the Matrix, how deep this rabbit hole goes. I really do feel like I took the red pill. Brace yourself. You're in for a rude awakening.
I'm Ed Begley Jr. How are you all this evening? Thank you for coming. I'm going to be your host for this evening's program. Welcome to Confronting the Evidence, a call to reopen the 9/11 investigation. I'll be your host for this evening's program. I'd like to ask you please to finish taking your seats as we're going to begin in a moment. I don't need to tell you that tonight marks the 3rd anniversary of the September 11th events. To begin tonight's program, we ask you to join us in a tribute to the fallen, if you will. We're going to hear from a lot of people this evening. We have a very distinguished panel, but right now I would like to bring out Jamie Hecht, my co-host for this evening. Jamie, would you come out here?
Thank you. Why does so large a group of people believe that the violence, the bereavement, and the grief inflicted on September 11th, which have had such permanent and ongoing consequences, some of which we can't foresee, was avoidable? That it wasn't a bolt out of the blue, some cosmic blow against humanity that should cause us all to bow our heads, remember the fallen, and then go back to business, or as we were urged to do at the time here in New York City, to go out and shop. Why have the questions posed by the families and by the independent researchers, some of whom you'll meet tonight, and so many of you, gone unanswered? In the next few hours, we shall embark upon a difficult journey, and we ask you to reconsider the horrifying events of September 11th in a new and troubling light. This journey is quite difficult. It requires that we re-examine some of our most basic beliefs. This requires overcoming a special kind of inertia, which we're rarely asked to move. And yet, the rewards are a change from anxiety to awareness, from passivity and quietism to a more full participation in the most urgent issues of our time, diminishing unnecessary harm and bringing people closer together for a world of possible safety and creativity and understanding.
If this is your first exposure to this material, you may feel very uncomfortable with that and challenged to confront your prior assumptions about September 11th. If you've already been exposed to these issues, you'll see that there are many things you want to look at. We have a large group of gifted researchers. Some of them have been questioning the official story of 9/11 from the very first day after the attacks. The questions these researchers have raised has been the subject of countless articles, discussions initiated by citizens in their homes. And there's been official silence by the commercial media about these events. But we've had a tremendous impact on what people have thought. Last month, a representative poll commissioned by Zogby found that about half of the city's residents do not believe that the attacks came by surprise. 41% of New York residents. Half.
That's 49.3% of residents of New York City and 41% of New York State residents. And the question is, how could that view be so pervasive? Why have their questions been ignored? We believe we owe it to the victims and their surviving family members to conduct a searching and fearless examination of the events of 9/11 from a number of different angles and to pursue it wherever it leads. We know of no better way to honor the fallen than to marshal our forces, intellectual, emotional, and confront what repels us, dark implications of evidence which it's all too easy to put aside. We hope that as you draw your own conclusions, we can aim together at a more complete account of those events.
People ducked into doorways, and people didn't stop to look behind. Sick that I couldn't breathe at all. I just find it's really hard to talk.
They're both down now. It's just a huge cloud of smoke.
We have an airplane that crashed into the Pentagon.
If you are among those to whom it seems impossible that the authorities would actually allow 9/11 to happen for political gain at such an enormous cost to human life, consider what the authorities knowingly allowed to happen to the residents of this city immediately after September 11th. Let me please introduce Jenna Orkin of the World Trade Center Environmental Organization. Jenna.
September 11th was a tragedy that has changed the course of history and the way we live. It was also an environmental disaster of historic proportions. The World Trade Center contained about 50,000 computers, each made with between 4 and 12 pounds of lead. That's not including World Trade Center 7. Hundreds of tons of asbestos coated the first 40 stories of at least one tower. The tens of thousands of fluorescent light bulbs each contained enough mercury to contaminate a quarter of a city block. The smoke detectors contained radioactive americium-241. The alkalinity of the air particles was equivalent to that of Drano. A month after the disaster, scientists from the University of California at Davis found levels of vanadium and very and ultrafine particles that were the highest they'd ever seen of 7,000 samples taken from around the world, including at the burning Kuwaiti oil fields. Dr. Marjorie Clark has testified that 9/11 was equivalent to dozens of asbestos factories, incinerators, and crematoria, as well as a volcano. Yet starting on September 13th, the EPA maintained the air is safe to breathe. A report by the EPA Inspector General in August of 2003 revealed that EPA's press releases, which initially warned the public about asbestos in the air, were edited to offer reassurances instead. The editing was performed by the White House Council on Environmental Quality in order to reopen Wall Street. That's in the report. As a result of the false good news, rescue workers were sometimes not allowed to wear respirators on the grounds that they might frighten the public. Insurance companies often refused to pay for cleanup, forcing residents to clean the tons of toxic debris in their apartments, as per the instructions from the New York City Department of Health. Use a wet mop or wet rag, and where the dust is really bad, wear long pants. We are beginning to see the consequences of this disastrous chain of events. Over half of the heroes who cleaned Ground Zero are already